So today is May 30th, 2015. This is the first day of our two-day session. And for today, we will continue investigating and sharing the wonderful, funny, profound, very Mahayana Sutra of Vimalakirti, the great layman of the time of the Buddha himself. So once again, remember, make listening to Teisho a form of zazen. Let the words just come in like the sound of air conditioning, the sound of cars passing in the street. Don't mull over. Don't try and figure it out with your intellect. Just take it in. Let it be there. Is what you practice with, breathe with, question with. And of course, if there's some question of precedence, which comes first, if you have any issues, or not any, but if you find it difficult to both work steadily with your practice as well as to listen, then make just listening the practice. Let everything else go. And just listen completely. Don't get caught up in thinking about. Just really listen, as if it was a piece of poetry, nothing to figure out. So we're now at chapter 11 of the Vimalakirti Sutra, and we're looking at the Burton-Watson translation from the Chinese of Kumarajiva, around 500 or so AD. And the chapter 11 is titled The Actions of the Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Buddha was in the Amra Gardens preaching the Dharma, when the ground suddenly became broad and beautifully adorned. And all the persons assembled there took on a golden color, radiance. Ananda said to the Buddha, remember Ananda was his cousin, and he of great memory, from whom all the sutras are said to have come to us. He heard, and he retained so well he could give them back exactly. I guess it was a photographic memory. And through Ananda, who was said to be very gentle, very quiet, almost, say, a kind of intellectual, the sutras have all come to us out of the oral tradition. Ananda said to the Buddha, world-honored one, and he was the Buddha's attendant for many years, by the way, what is the reason for this auspicious sign? The area has become suddenly broadened and adorned, and the members of the Sangha have all taken on a golden color. The Buddha said to Ananda, Vimalakirti and Manjushri, reverently surrounded by a great gathering of persons, have decided to come here. Remember, they were all in Vimalakirti's little 10-foot square room. Thousands of bodhisattvas, and the bodhisattvas from another world, the world of the bodhisattva fragrance accumulated, and the phantom bodhisattva created by Vimalakirti with his transcendental powers, and, of course, Vimalakirti on his sickbed, where he had taken the skillful means of being not quite well. Yet, that was his way of teaching. So the Buddha said, they're all coming here. Therefore, this auspicious sign has, first of all, appeared. At that moment, Vimalakirti said to Manjushri, let us go together to see the Buddha and join the bodhisattvas in paying obeisance and making offerings. Manjushri said, excellent, we will go indeed. This is just the time to do so. Vimalakirti, employing his supernatural powers, proceeded to pick up the whole great assembly, along with their lion seats, place them in the palm of his right hand, and journey with them to the place where the Buddha was. Of course, what is the place where the Buddha is? Don't let that go by. What is the place where the Buddha is? And how can Vimalakirti pick up the whole assembly in the palm of his right hand and carry them to the place where the Buddha was? After arriving there and depositing them on the ground, he bowed his head at the feet of the Buddha, circled to the right, performing 7 circumambulations of the Buddha, and pressing his palms together with a single mind, stood to one side. The Bodhisattvas all immediately left their seats, bowed their heads at the Buddha's feet, performed 7 circumambulations, and stood to one side. The major disciples, Brahmas, Indras, and 4 heavenly kings, all likewise left their seats, bowed their heads at the Buddha's feet, and stood to one side. Then the Buddha, after making the customary greetings and inquiries, sent them back to their seats. After all of them, following his instructions, had settled again in their seats, the Buddha said to Shariputra, who you remember is one of the great disciples, yet in this sutra he's the fall guy. He said to Shariputra, "Did you see what these bodhisattvas, these great men, did through their freely exercised supernatural powers?" "Yes, I saw it. And what did you think of it?" Shariputra is always just like us in this sutra. He settles the ground and says, you don't have to be very different and just like us to be a great disciple. And he says, "World-honored one, what I saw them do was incredible. My mind cannot comprehend it. It is beyond my fathoming." At that time, Ananda said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, this fragrance I smell is like nothing I have ever known. What fragrance is this?" The Buddha replied to Ananda, "This is the fragrance that comes from the pores of these bodhisattvas." Then Shariputra said to Ananda, "Our pores too put forth this fragrance." He's such an ordinary fellow. Usually, Shariputra is presented as this very lofty, very enlightened being. In this sutra, he says, "Oh yeah, our pores too put forth this fragrance." He's very disingenuous, very ordinary, a kind of chatterbox. "Where does it come from?" asked Ananda. Remember, he wasn't there at Vimalakirti, so he didn't know about any of this. Then Shariputra explains, "It comes from the rice left over from the Buddha's meal that the rich man, Vimalakirti, had brought from the country many fragrances," replied Shariputra. "The pores of everyone who ate it at his house emit this kind of fragrance." Then Ananda asked Vimalakirti, "How long will this fragrant aroma last?" Vimalakirti said, "Until the rice is digested." "And how long will it be before the rice is digested?" "The power of this rice is such that it will be 7 days before it is digested. Moreover, Ananda, if voice hearers who have not yet reached the stage of ultimate determination, that is to become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas themselves, to realize Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, if they eat this rice, they will be able to digest it only after they reach that stage. And if persons who have already reached that stage eat this rice, they will be able to digest it only after they have gained liberation of mind. If those who have not yet set their minds on attaining the great vehicle, Maha, great, Yana, vehicle, eat this rice, they will have to set their minds on that before they can digest it. If those who have already set their minds on doing so eat this rice, they will have to accept the truth of birthlessness before they can digest it. If those who have already accepted the truth of birthlessness eat this rice, they will have to advance to the place where Buddhahood is assured them in their next birth before they can digest it. It is like the medicine called superior flavor that remains undigested until all the poisons in the body of the person who takes it have been eliminated. This rice is the same. Only after all the poisons of earthly desires after all the poisons of earthly desires have been wiped out, will it be digested? You can almost say the same with the sutra. How can we fathom all these miraculous powers of Vimalakirti unless we too get to the stage, same, close to the stage that he's at? It may take a long time. So we just listen to the sutra with a lot of joy and reverence and wowness. Wow, as Shariputra said. How did he do that? Wow. Ananda said to the Buddha, I have never heard of such a thing. World-honored one, to think that this fragrant rice can be used to do the Buddha's work. The Buddha said, just so, Ananda. And there are some Buddha lands where the radiant light of the Buddha is used to do the Buddha's work. Some where Bodhisattvas are used to do the Buddha's work. Some where phantom beings conjured up by the Buddha are used for the Buddha's work. Some where the Bodhi tree is used for the Buddha's work. Some where the Buddha's garments or bedding are used for the Buddha's work. Some where the Buddha's food is used for the Buddha's work. Some where gardens, groves, pavilions, and towers are used to do the Buddha's work. Some where the 32 features and 80 characteristics, auspicious marks that accompany the body of the Buddha, are used to do the Buddha's work. Some where the Buddha's body is used for the Buddha's work. And some where empty space is used for the Buddha's work. Living beings responding to these various agents are thereby led to undertake the practice of the precepts. There are lands where similes, such as dreams, phantoms, reflections, echoes, images in a mirror, the moon in the water, or shimmering heat waves, are used to do the Buddha's work. There are some, get this, there are some where voices, spoken words, or written words are used to do the Buddha's work. I guess that's our world. Or pure Buddha lands where tranquil silence, the assembly just sits together in silence. No need to talk, no need for teishos, no need for doksan. Just sitting. It's used to do the Buddha's work. Tranquil silence, without words, without explanations, without purport, without cognition. That is, without mentality of the grasping, limited sort that we all know so well. Without action, without conditioning, does the Buddha's work. Thus, Ananda, among all daily activities of the Buddhas, their comings and goings, every act that they carry out, there is not one that does not do the Buddha's work. Ananda, there is a gate known as the Four Devils, or Maras, and the 84,000 earthly desires. Living beings are wearied and belabored by these Maras and desires, but the Buddhas use this as a method by which to do the Buddha's work. This is called the Dharma gate of entry to all Buddhas. Bodhisattvas who have entered this gate when they see Buddha lands, replete with all manner of purity and beauty, will not for that reason feel delight or longing or elation, and when they see Buddha lands with all sorts of impurities, they will not feel sad or vexed or downcast. They will merely regard the Buddhas with renewed purity of mind, experiencing a joy and reverence they have never known before. The merits of the various Buddhas, the thus come ones, are all equal, but in order to convert living beings, they manifest themselves in different kinds of Buddha lands. Ananda, look at the various Buddha lands. The land in them is varied, but but there is no variation in the sky. And it is the same when you look at the various Buddhas. Their physical bodies are varied, but that is all. There is no variation in their unimpeded wisdom. Ananda, a physical body, impressive features, lineage, precepts, meditation, wisdom, emancipations, the insights of emancipations, powers, fearlessness, properties not shared by others, great compassion, great pity, the observance of proper demeanor, as well as a set, fixed lifespan, the power to preach the Dharma, to teach and convert others, to lead living beings to enlightenment, to purify the Buddha lands, and to assimilate the Dharma of other Buddhas? All these are possessed equally by the various Buddhas. Therefore, they are called Samyak Sambuddha, perfectly enlightened Buddha. They are called Tathagata, thus come one. They are called Buddha, enlightened one. Ananda, if I were to explain to you in detail the meaning of these three epithets, you could live for a whole kalpa and still not hear all I have to say. Even if all the living beings in the 1,000,000,000-fold world were like you, Ananda, who are foremost in hearing the teachings and concentrating on and retaining all you have heard, and they were to live for a whole kalpa, they could not hear it all. So it is, Ananda. The Anyuttara Samyak Sambodhi of the Buddhas is beyond fathoming, and their wisdom and eloquence defy comprehension. Beyond fathoming. Don't even try. Don't even try to grip it with our small intellect. Realize it, awake to it. But don't turn it into a little bit of understanding in your head. Realize it, awake to it, moment by moment. Ananda said to the Buddha, from now on, I will never dare think of myself as a person who has heard many of the teachings. The Buddha said to Ananda, don't be discouraged. Why? Because when I spoke of you as foremost among the voice hearers in the volume of teachings you have heard, I was not speaking with the Bodhisattvas in mind. So do not take the matter to heart, Ananda. No wise person should try to estimate the abilities of the Bodhisattvas. All the deepest places in the sea can still be fathomed, but the meditation, wisdom, power to retain the teachings, eloquence, and all the various merits of the Bodhisattvas are immeasurable. Ananda, you and the others had best forget about the actions of the Bodhisattvas. This manifestation of supernatural power that Vimalakirti has just now shown us, no voice hearer or pratika Buddha could equal in 100,000 kalpas, no matter how he might exhaust his powers of transformation. Then the Bodhisattvas, who had come from the world many fragrances, remember they were giant Bodhisattvas compared to beings on this planet, were huge, had this fragrance emanating from them. They pressed their palms together and addressed the Buddha of our world, Shakyamuni, saying, world-honored one, when we first saw this land, or this world, we thought of it as base and inferior. But now we regret our error and have put such thoughts out of our minds. Why? Because the expedient means employed by the Buddhas are beyond comprehension. In order to save living beings, they manifest different kinds of Buddha lands depending upon what is appropriate to the circumstances. Very well then, world-honored one. We would like you to bestow a little of your teachings on us, so that when we return to our land, we will have something to remember the thus come one by. The Buddha announced to the Bodhisattvas, there is the doctrine of the exhaustible and the inexhaustible emancipation. You would do well to learn this. What does exhaustible mean? It means those things that are conditioned. What does inexhaustible mean? It means those things that are unconditioned. But beings such as the Bodhisattvas do not exhaust or have done with the conditioned, nor do they dwell, that is, stick to, the unconditioned. What is meant by not exhausting the condition? It means not setting aside great compassion, not renouncing great pity. Though Bodhisattvas have all realized vast empty mind without limit, they don't go, well, it's all empty, so that person's suffering, it's just emptiness. They don't go, oh, that's karma, that person's suffering. Comes out of emptiness. No. Bodhisattvas never abandon great compassion, no matter how deep their realization of emptiness might be, so-called emptiness. Of course, emptiness isn't empty. They don't renounce great pity, giving profound expression to the mind of comprehensive wisdom and never forgetting it, teaching and converting living beings without ever wearying, being constantly mindful of the four methods of winning people and applying them at the proper time, guarding and upholding the correct Dharma without thought for life or limb. It means to work tirelessly, to plant the roots of goodness, to keep the will at all times fixed on skillful means and the transfer of merit to others, to seek the Dharma without ever slacking, to preach the Dharma without ever stinting. It means diligently making offerings to the Buddhas, purposely entering the realm of birth and death with no feelings of fear, facing all types of honor or disgrace without thought of sadness or joy, not looking with contempt on those who have yet to learn, and respecting the learned as though they were the Buddha himself. It means arousing correct thoughts in those sunk in earthly desires, but without unduly prizing the desire to remove oneself from passion. One should not cling to one's own desires, but applaud the desires of others. It means looking on meditational states as though they were a form of hell. That is, not sticking to them because they're so wonderful, but on the realm of birth and death, with all the difficulties we face every day, as though contemplating a garden, viewing those who come seeking instruction with thoughts of how one may be a good teacher, setting aside one's own possessions and thinking how to acquire comprehensive wisdom, seeing those who violate the precepts and rousing thoughts of how to save them. It means thinking of the paramitas, or perfections, as one's father and mother, thinking of the elements of the way as one's retinue of followers, working ceaselessly to nourish the roots of goodness, using the adornments of other pure lands to complete a Buddha land of one's own, practicing unbounded charity and thereby acquiring auspicious physical characteristics, putting aside all evil and purifying body, mouth, and mind, dwelling in the realm of birth and death for countless kalpas, ever valiant in mind, listening to the immeasurable virtues of the Buddha, one's determination never flagging, using the sword of wisdom to cut down the thieves of earthly desires, going beyond the realm of components, elements, and sense media, shouldering the burden of living beings, and bringing them to unending emancipation, employing great assiduousness in driving back and vanquishing the armies of Mara, that is, of self-centeredness, constantly seeking to practice the wisdom that is without discriminative thought, the true aspect of reality. With regard to worldly things, lessening desires, knowing what is enough. With regard to unworldly things, tirelessly seeking them, and yet not rejecting the things of the world. Certainly, this seems like a very balanced presentation. Very good, wise advice at how to live one's fullest and highest, not rejecting one's life and the things of one's life or the ordinary desires of one's life, just not sticking there as that being it, but doing one's best to go beyond to one's true, deepest wisdom, which is our actual nature and always potential. Always potentially right there, this very moment, to be realized more deeply and more deeply yet. It means never breaking the rules of proper demeanor, yet being able to accommodate to worldly ways, calling up transcendental powers and wisdom and using them to guide living beings, acquiring concentration and retention of memory so that one never forgets what one has heard, being able to distinguish the different capacities of people correctly and freeing them from doubt, expounding the Dharma with a pleasing and appropriate eloquence that flows unimpeded, scrupulously carrying out the 10 good actions and receiving the blessings of human and heavenly beings, cultivating the 4 immeasurable qualities of mind. Oh, I'm terrible about remembering what they are, but joy in the triumphs of others is one of the 4 immeasurable. This is a very hard one to practice and to realize, to see others doing well and feeling good for them, no matter how poorly we may be doing. And equanimity is another. That is, not being thrown when hard things, painful things come our way, as they surely will. Staying steady, right in the midst. These are 2 of the key immeasurable qualities of mind. And opening up the Brahma way, earnestly requesting to hear the preaching of the Dharma and receiving it with joy and commendation, acquiring the voice of the Buddha and the excellence of his body, mouth, and mind, acquiring his proper demeanor, practicing his good Dharma with profound diligence, ever more accomplished in action, using the great vehicle teachings to create a community of Bodhisattvas, never self-indulgent in mind, never missing an opportunity for acts of goodness. One who practices these methods may be called a Bodhisattva, who does not exhaust the conditioned. This is quite a teaching from the Buddha. Quite profound and quite ordinary. To never fail at these things is quite a high bar to leap. To never fail at it. Occasionally, we can do it, and then we can keep trying to do better. And do it again. What is meant by saying that the Bodhisattva does not dwell in the unconditioned? It means that one studies and practices the teachings on emptiness, but does not take emptiness to be enlightenment. This is a very Zen perspective. To think that emptiness is the same as enlightenment is still one-sided and is not held up by Zen teaching to be the point. One must awake to the ground of emptiness. That's the beginning. But to stick there and think, oh, emptiness is it, that's not the point. But how does one go beyond emptiness? But does not take emptiness to be enlightenment. That's the job. One studies and practices the teachings on non-form and non-action, but does not take non-form and non-action to be enlightenment. One studies and practices the teachings on non-arousal of causes, but does not take non-arousal to be enlightenment. One views things as impermanent, but does not neglect to cultivate the roots of goodness. There it is in a nutshell. That's it. One views things as impermanent. Why? Because they are. They just are. But does not neglect to cultivate the roots of goodness, responding to the difficulties of impermanent things with your best effort, your deepest compassion. This is the way of the Bodhisattva. This is our challenge every day. This is what it comes down to again and again, to really realize emptiness and impermanence, and yet to not stick there. Oh, now we're safe. Never fail to work on developing one's compassion. Act in a way that's good to all, not just to oneself. This is very hard to do, but it's crucial. One views the world as marked by suffering, but does not hate to be born and die in it. One sees that there is no permanent ego, but is tireless in instructing others. One sees that there is such a thing as tranquil extinction. Nirvana means blown out, like a lamp or a candle blown out by the wind. What's blown out? Greed, self-centeredness, anger, all the disturbance of mind are just blown out. Tranquil extinction. This is nirvana. But does not dwell in extinction for long. You don't stick there. One views the world as something to be cast off, withdrawn from. Yet, with body and mind, one practices goodness. One sees there is no destination, endless path. Yet one makes the good dharma one's destination. Every step is the destination. Every breath is the destination. Every koan is the destination. One sees there's no destination, yet makes the good dharma, just as it is, one's practice of it, one's destination. Where else did we think we were going? One sees there is no birth, yet one takes on the form of birth in order to share the burdens of others. One sees that outflows of passion should be cut off, yet one does not cut them off, nor does one wallow indulgently in them. One sees that there is nothing to be practiced, yet one practices the Dharma in order to teach and convert living beings. Convert them to what? I don't think he's saying you should turn everyone into Buddhists. Convert them into the kind, wise people we each have potential to be. One embraces the view of emptiness and nothingness, yet does not discard one's great compassion. One embraces the view that the correct Dharma can be attained, yet one does not follow lesser vehicle doctrines in this matter. One embraces the view that all phenomena are void, lacking firmness, lacking personality, lacking a master, lacking form. Yet, while one's original vow remains unfulfilled, one's original vow is the vow to wake up, the vow to realize one's own Buddha nature. Roshi Kapleau used to say, just the way a peach seed is taken a vow to become a peach, each human being already has an original vow to be a fully awakened Buddha. It's our nature. We just have to keep going. One embraces the view that all phenomena are false, void, lacking firmness, yet while one's original vow remains unfulfilled, one does not regard merits, virtues, meditation, practice, or wisdom as meaningless. When one practices these methods, one may be called a bodhisattva who does not dwell in the unconditioned. At that time, those bodhisattvas in the world of the Buddha fragrance accumulated, having heard the explanation of this teaching, were all filled with great delight. Selecting from among the many wonderful flowers, those of various colors and various fragrances, they scattered them throughout the whole 1,000,000,000-fold world. And then, having made their offerings to the Buddha and to these sutra teachings, as well as to the other bodhisattvas, they bowed their heads in obeisance at the Buddha's feet and sighed at having heard what they had never heard before, exclaiming, "Shakyamuni, Buddha knows how to employ expedient means in a truly skillful manner, having spoken these words, those bodhisattvas from the world of fragrance accumulated, Buddha, suddenly vanished from sight and returned to their own country, or their own world, or their own galaxy. It's quite unclear. But wherever it is they came from, that's where they went. That ends the chapter on the activity or actions of the Bodhisattvas. We have a little time, so we could go a little further into the next chapter. Unless anybody has any questions or comments that they'd like to bring up on this current chapter we just finished. If so, please go ahead. I can't see behind me. We're not getting formal, like putting out a mat in front of me for anyone to come up with, though at some point we will do that. So if anyone has any questions or comments, you can speak up and I'll hear you if I can't see you. Okay, well, this is a very interesting chapter, chapter 12, Seeing Akshobhya Buddha. At that time, the world-honored one said to Vimalakirti, "You wanted to see the thus come one. Now, how do you regard the thus come one?" Vimalakirti said, "As I would regard my own true form or reality. In that same way do I regard the thus come one." The thus come one is the Buddha. Vimalakirti says, "I regard the Buddha as my own true form or reality. I regard the thus come one as not existing from past times, not departing in the future, not abiding. You're at the present. You're at present. That's the three times, past, present, future, are conditioned. What isn't bound by past, present, future? What's here? Actually, right now, before we chop it up into past, present, future. I do not regard him as form," said Vimalakirti. "I do not regard him as resembling form. I do not regard him as having the nature of form. I do not regard him as perception, conception, volition, or consciousness. I do not regard him as resembling consciousness. I do not regard him as having the nature of consciousness. He does not rise out of the four great elements, but is the same as the empty sky. He is without accumulation of the six sense media. He is transcended eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and does not exist in the threefold world. He has separated himself from the three defilements of greed, anger, and stupidity, passed through the three gates to emancipation, and acquired the three understandings, which are the equivalent of ignorance. He is not identical in form with others, not different in form, not of his own form, not of some other form, not lacking form, not acquiring form." The note here says Vimalakirti spells out the full process of negation, only for the first and last of the five components, form and consciousness. But actually it's assumed that the same negations apply to the other three, perception, conception, and volition. The point here is goes back, actually, you can find it in Hindu texts as well, neti, neti, not this, not this. Anything you can think of, anything that you can hold on to with your mind, that's not it. What is it? He is not on this shore, not on the other shore, not in midstream, and yet he converts living beings. He is seen to be in tranquil extinction, but does not remain in extinction for long. He is not this, he is not that. He does not show himself in this, he does not show himself in that. One cannot know him through wisdom. One cannot be conscious of him through consciousness. He is without darkness, without brightness, without name, without form, without strength, without weakness. He is not pure, not defiled, not in any direction, not removed from direction, not conditioned. This is very Indian. Not unconditioned, without purport, without explanation. He is not charitable, not stingy, does not observe the precepts, does not violate them, is not forbearing, not irate, does not press forward, does not slack, is not calm in mind, is not distracted, is not wise, is not stupid, is not sincere, is not deceitful, does not arrive, does not depart, does not go out, does not enter in. He is cut off from all that can be said in words. Vimalakirti does that at every opportunity. He goes the limit with words, as does this sutra, to say, it can't be put into words. Now, Dogen would challenge that, saying, but words themselves are it. When you get that, why then words themselves express it. Even like a finger can't point to itself, but the finger can be it. He is not a field that produces merit, not a field that does not produce merit. He is not worthy of alms. He is not unworthy of alms. He is not to be acquired, not to be put aside, does not possess form, is not without form. He is identical with the ultimate reality, one with the Dharma nature. That is Dharma Kaya, highest, purest, clearest, profoundest, aspect of our own nature, each person. He is not a field that produces merit. Oh yeah, he cannot be labeled, cannot be measured. He is beyond all labeling and measuring. He is not big, not little, not to be seen, not to be heard, not to be awakened to, not to be known. Not to be known. That's a hard one, isn't it? We work so hard in practice, in Zen, to know reality, to know ourselves, to know our own nature. And yet here Vimalakirti is saying, Buddha can't be known, not to be known. What is he pointing to? Don't grasp it with your mind and think that's it. Go back to your breath, this very breath. Go back to your questioning. This very question. Endless path. There you are. He is removed from all ties and bonds, equal to all wisdoms, identical with living beings, free of distinctions with regard to things. He is utterly without loss, without contamination, without anxiety, without action, without rousing, without birth, without extinction, without fear, without sorrow, without joy, without weariness, without attachment, without a past existence, without a future existence, without a present existence. No words or explanations whatsoever can distinguish and depict him. Lest you get depressed about all this. What is it that can't be pinned down in words? What is it that's so good that it can't be limited by words? That's a hopeful thing. World-honored one, the body of the thus come one is like this, and this is the way I regard him. Oh, this is, Vimalakirti speaking. To regard in this manner is called correct regarding. To regard in any other is called erroneous regarding. At that time, Shariputra asked Vimalakirti, this is interesting, where did you die before you were reborn here? Vimalakirti said, in the Dharma that you learned, is there any such thing as dying or being born? Shariputra replied, no, there is no dying or being born. If all things are without the nature of dying or being born, then why do you ask where I died before I was reborn here? What is your opinion? Do phantom men and women conjured up by a magician know anything of dying or being born? No, there is no dying or being born for them. That is for phantom beings conjured by a magician. Remember, in the last chapter, we've spoken about there are some worlds where the Buddhists teach with simile. Well, here's simile. It's like phantom beings conjured by a magician. Do they die? Or are they reborn? And have you not heard the Buddha say that all things are in the nature of conjured beings? Yes, replied Shariputra. If all things are in the nature of conjured beings, then why do you ask where I died before I was reborn here? Shariputra, dying is in its nature simply the destruction of something that is empty. And being born is in its nature the continuation of something that is empty. But the Bodhisattva, though he dies, does not wipe out his good roots. Though he is born, he does not prolong those things that are evil. At that time, the Buddha said to Shariputra, the Buddha breaks in and won't let Vimalakirti keep going around with this. He says, there is a country, because he goes back to, he doesn't stick in the ultimate, the absolute. He takes it right into the relative, where birth and death do happen. And the Buddha himself says, there is a country, could be a galaxy, a world. We don't know what the translation is really saying. There is a country called Wonderful Joy, could be a mind state, with the Buddha named immovable, that is Akshobhya, one of the very famous primal Buddhas. Vimalakirti has died in that world and was reborn in this one. So Vimalakirti, the layman, came from the world of Akshobhya Buddha, the immovable. Shariputra said, I have never heard of such a thing, world-honored one, that this man could bring himself to abandon a land of purity and willingly come to this place with all its wrath and injury. Shariputra knows what this world is like. We know what this world is like. It's a difficult world. In some ways, every time we get a chance to sit for an extended period, we're coming into the world of Akshobhya Buddha, immovable, without wrath, without violence, a world of great purity. This is the world of our own mind, our own nature. When we give it a chance, it's so shy. We give it a chance to emerge, to come forth. We find immovable ground. These are all similes. Vimalakirti said to Shariputra, what is your opinion? When the light of the sun shines forth, does it mix with the darkness? No, replied Shariputra. When the light of the sun shines forth, all darkness at once ceases to exist. It's not that the light and dark mix. Vimalakirti said, and the sun, why does it visit this continent of Jambudvipa? It is Rose Apple Land, which could be India or could be this whole planet Earth. Rose Apple Land, a blooming world with all its difficulties. Because it wishes to use its brightness to drive the darkness away, replied Shariputra. Vimalakirti said the Bodhisattva is like this. Though he is born in an impure Buddha land, he does this so he can convert living beings. He does not mix with or share its stupidity and darkness. He merely wipes out the darkness of earthly desires that besets living beings. And we'll stop here. It gets quite science fiction-y again at this point on. And so we'll save that for tomorrow and enter another realm with every day is a new day, new realm. Let's save this next portion for Teisho tomorrow, the second and last day of our little non-residential hot weather session. So let's stop here and recite the 4 Bodhisattva vows together with all beings and resume our formal practice.